Hi there, welcome to this episode of Riding Tandem. This is a place where we explore journeys and challenges and triumphs and expert advice with entrepreneurs, business owners, people who are making waves in the world of business or maybe just trying to figure it out. And today I had the opportunity to speak with an amazing woman. She's an inspiring guest. We chatted for quite a while, so fair warning on this one. It's a little bit longer than some of our other episodes, but totally worth it. There's some real true golden nuggets towards the end. So I am going to encourage you that if you don't have a full, hour and a half plus, be sure to earmark this one and come back to it because you're going to want to listen all the way through to the end. After this woman had she's had a 20 plus year career in small business accounting, and now she is a CFO mindset coach, and she's worked with women-owned business owners across the country. And so if you're not a women-owned business, that's okay. You're still going to gain so much from this. But just helping people confidently manage their finances and achieve their full potential. She's held every accounting position imaginable, from bookkeeper to vice president. She's also owned 4 businesses, and she shares practical advice. She shares mindset advice. We get into some of the nitty gritty and some of the ideas for making sure that you can stay on top of your finances and what that looks like. But really, in the end, her mission and goal is to support wildly profitable and successful people. Like, when I say that, she's there to support them in making sure that they become wildly profitable and successful. So Becky Edwards is our guest today, and I'm excited to have her here. As many of you probably know, if you've listened to this podcast, you know that I do like to talk about money, and I like to talk about the practicalities and the mindset with that. So this is a fun episode for sure in that regard, and you're going to take home some real good mindset things, some shifts perhaps, as well as some practical advice that I think you can start applying right away. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Well, hi everyone. Welcome back, of course, to another episode of Riding Tandem. And this is going to be a fun conversation, like they always are, because we're going to talk about like the big thing with business, which is money. And it's funny because I feel like this is a conversation that people actually avoid, which is kind of funny, seeing as how we're in business to make money and be wildly profitable. But I have today Becky Edwards, and she is running a really awesome business. And she's the powerhouse really behind the CFO mindset. Well, CFO mindset coach is what she does. And so welcome, Becky. I'm excited to have you because you have so much experience in this field from like 20 plus years. Is that right?
Yeah. So I counted it up, 25 years experience, and I have worked with businesses in over 25 different industries.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I have a lot of evidence and a lot of experience to what works across the board.
Yeah. And what I love too, like just getting to know you a little bit, reading your bio, hearing about you, right? We were just chatting before here. We're like, how did we get connected again? And there's a really great network of women in our community. And we've just kind of crossed paths a little bit. And then Jenny Hayes, who helps put together this with us, she was like, oh my gosh, you need to talk to Becky Edwards. And that's one of the things I like about a community of women that are just really connected in the business world. Because we get to meet and have conversations like these, which is awesome.
I will say the Omaha small business community of women business owners is really special. And from what I understand, it is not like this everywhere. So we might think this is normal, but the community and the networks that the women business owners here in Omaha created for themselves is really top notch. And we really support each other and look out for each other and open doors for each other. And it's one of the best things about being in Omaha.
I agree. And I think this is, I mean, I know we're going to talk about a lot of other things, but just to say for listeners, you're ambitious people. So if you don't have that community, maybe it's time to start one, right? Because someone's got to start it. And that's right. It's really beneficial. So Becky, you have done everything imaginable is what your bio says, from bookkeeper to vice president, and you've owned multiple businesses.
Yes.
And I love your mission about equipping women just to be more confident and take control of their finances. So I'm curious, what made you decide to transition into CFO, being a CFO mindset coach?
So, I have 25 years of actual history. Like my bio said, I have been everything from a bookkeeper to an inventory control specialist, a controller, a vice president, a cost accountant, and a business owner. And all of those pieces are part of the accounting puzzle. And so I have been really blessed with a really deep and wide level of experience across the board. But what made me transition into coaching and teaching women business owners how to set up their accounting processes and understand them and just feel more confident when it comes to having conversations with their money is that I worked with enough people who really were giving away their power to a bookkeeper. A lot of the clients that I would work with back when in 2017-ish, I had an actual bookkeeping company. That was one of the businesses I owned, where I did bookkeeping for small businesses. I had a few employees, and we did outsourced bookkeeping for them. And what I was really finding is that there's a lot of small business owners who don't know the accounting part of their business. And that's okay, because we're all experts in that thing that we sell. And when we're small business owners, we're really good at the things we do, and we outsource the rest. But when it comes to the money in their business, they were outsourcing like too much power, because they were just sort of like, here, take care of this, deal with this. And generally speaking, I would like to think I am, and most bookkeepers I know are honest people, but there was a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have been doing, a lot of things that they shouldn't have been giving away. And I really wanted to teach business owners how to feel confident having those conversations, how to not give that power away, and how to have a little bit more control over the accounting department in your own small business, especially for those small micro businesses that might be one person to 5 people, and everybody's doing a little bit of everything. And it just felt, I really wanted to empower people more than just outsourcing bookkeeping could do for them.
I love that. And this is definitely something that I am super passionate about, is like knowing your numbers, and that it doesn't have to be intimidating. Even though I am by no means an expert in this, but that's an area that I operate in within our business. I handle those things, and Michaela handles other things. But this is definitely a conversation that I think is so important. And I want to put a pin in this and come back to it. But one of the questions I definitely have for you, so like, let's make a mental note, right? Is what are some of those things, like a couple examples of, hey, you may not need to hand this off. I'd love for people to hear just a couple examples you have with that. But before we get there, tell us a bit about, because not only are you helping businesses, but you started your own business too, right? So like you're like walking both sides here. What was the shift like from more of that corporate world? And if corporate world's not the right word there, if you describe it in a different way, but more that corporate world into like coaching in an entrepreneurship field, because those feel like they're fairly different.
They are. So I would say that I am an entrepreneur at heart. Like, I like the freedom that comes from owning my own business. I always say people start businesses for one of 3 reasons, or maybe all of them, but it's financial freedom, creative freedom, and time freedom. We want to do what we want, when we want, how we want, and we don't want to cap our income, right? We want to
That's right.
potential. And, sometimes when you own your own business and things get a little hard and a little, whatever you want to call it, sticky, it feels like it would be easier to go work for someone else. Right. And so hop back into that world. And I think what I found out over the course of that 25 years and my other businesses is that I don't want to work for someone else. I really want to work for myself, and I really want to own my schedule, own my time, and have the freedom to create new offers and do those things. However, way back when, I did not even know that I had a marketable skill set.
Interesting.
in my mind, I was like, well, if you're going to be in accounting, you're going to work for someone else. Like that's the only way to be an accountant, was to work for someone else. And
Interesting.
so I really didn't realize that I had a marketable skill set until someone I was networking with on LinkedIn back in 2017 said, I see you have a lot of experience with QuickBooks. Do you think you could help me set it up? She had her own small business. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, just like for free, because like,
yeah, you're like, yeah, coffee, sure.
I didn't realize like that she was, sort of creating an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I can help you. And she's like, well, how much would you charge? And I'm like, charge? People charge, and then I just sort of just talking with her and realizing that this is a marketable skill set, that I could actually use this and create a business out of it. But teaching was something that I wasn't 100% sure how that would go, right? Because in my mind, it always felt easier to sit next to someone and have that face-to-face conversation. But luckily, the boom of Zoom calls has created a really awesome situation where I can sit across from someone just like you, Vivian, just like we are now, and have that conversation face to face. They can share their screen, they can show me their accounting, we can talk about their numbers, and we don't have to commute.
It is huge. And in fact, I was kind of laughing with you before we got on here. I was running a tad late because I was taking care of something for, our accountant. But it was one of the things that she even said. She goes, hey, if you're stuck, why don't we screen share, and you can literally point out, because that's one of the struggles I often have. Like my brain thinks in money.
Mm-hmm.
It just always has. And I know I've mentioned it on the podcast before. Sometimes I think people hesitate to say that, but like, I like money. I want to make money. I'm not ashamed of wanting to make money. I want to be generous with money. It's like sometimes you're like, oh, I'm motivated by XYZ. And I'm like, yeah, because money funds it. It's kind of how I look at that a lot. But I don't have any formal background in it. And I'm often creating things, or I'm on the right track, but I don't know the right terminology, or I'm explaining it in like the way my brain thinks of it. And obviously somebody who's an accounting mind, they're like, oh, what you mean is in accounting terms, XYZ. And I struggle often with that, where I'm like, I know there's something here. I know I'm not explaining it well.
Yeah.
How do I? So being able to have those conversations and be able to hop on and just literally screen share, like I'm trying to figure out a tax code thing right now. And I'm like, I don't know. There's like 18 drop downs. I can't find what I'm looking for. Am I using the right terms? Yada, yada.
Yeah.
So I love that. I mean, we do have so many opportunities now because of those,
Yeah.
those tools and resources, where it doesn't have to be as scary. Just say, hey, can you just like literally walk me through this? Like, I don't get it,
Well, and the opportunity that it's created is that now I can help women across the country, and not just in my local area. Because before, I was literally driving to their office and picking up their stuff, or sitting in their office and doing the work.
Right.
And now it's like we can do it from anywhere with anyone, as long as you understand, obviously not outside of the U.S. Because everybody has different accounting rules and regulations. But for the most part, for what I'm doing, I'm not a CPA, and I don't help people file their taxes, but I know enough about taxes to help them prepare, and so that they aren't surprised at tax time, which is a huge thing for businesses to kind of be able to see it coming and be able to financially prepare for it.
That is so huge, and it's one of the things that my business partner and I have talked about. Is that's one of the assets that I bring to the table. You always think about with business partners, you want to be sure that you're both bringing like a lot of value. You don't want to be duplicates of each other. Sometimes the business partner think, oh, I just want someone like me. It's like, no, you do not. Right. So that's one of the assets that I bring, is I really like to think and project ahead. And that has helped our taxes. Like when we had separate businesses, we have our strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes there'd be instances where you got stuck at the end of the year. Well, now I bring that to the business where like, we're not stuck. The money's sitting on the side. It's ready to go. Like we've got taxes planned for to the best of our abilities. And that is such a load off, by the way. So anyone listening who's like, I'm avoiding it because it feels like, don't avoid it. Just set a percentage aside, put it in an account. Don't
I will
touch
tell you,
it.
the weight that removes from your shoulders and the things that it takes away from the back of your mind, that thing that's always kind of churning.
Yes.
That when I have this process that, whether it's every week or every month, whatever it is, I'm going to set aside X percent and I'm going to put it over here. And when tax time comes around, I'm going to write the check and I'm going to move on with my day. And when you can get that mentality around that money instead of that, sometimes it's fear or anxiety, or just sort of like anticipation, right? Like that kind of negative anticipation of, I don't know what it's going to be. It might be good or it might be bad.
Yes.
I am going to be totally surprised when my CPA gives me that number because I have no idea. And what I try to teach each of my clients is, if you know how to read your financial reports, you know what that number is going to be, at least a reasonable ballpark, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not down to the dollar, but you have a good idea and you don't have to be surprised.
Yeah, scrambling around. Okay, I totally want to dive into more of this like expert advice that, but I have one more question about your like business origin story, right? It's so hard sometimes. I'm like, we got to talk about your business. We need to talk about the expert advice you have. But as you were making that transition, because this is a conversation I have with a lot of people. They're working in corporate something. They're thinking about a business of them for themselves, but they're not sure what to anticipate here because it's a completely different mindset in many ways. So I'm curious to know, for their benefit, what were some of the challenges you faced when you were transitioning from, corporate to your own boss?
So, one of them, which is a very common, is what happens when I have a big lull in income, right? I'm going from this regular paycheck to now creating my own cash flow, right? And there's going to be a period of time expected where sales are either low or even non-existent until you ramp up to that sales, understanding your own marketing and sales cycle.
For sure.
And so I had what I call an emotional support job.
Okay, nice. I love this.
And I found a part-time, very flexible bookkeeping job. It didn't pay very much at all, but it was enough to ease my mind, right? Like it was enough to kind of go, okay, I am making some money, right? And I just created my business around that schedule. So I can't remember exactly what days I worked, but I want to say I worked Mondays and Thursdays. Like it was a very
flexible. Yeah.
And so I just said, I take client calls on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then on Friday is when I kind of do my own business stuff, right? And I've always kind of kept that schedule. I try not to schedule any client calls on Fridays because that's a main day for me to catch up on anything that I need to do or do my bookkeeping, write my.
Oh wait, you have to do your own bookkeeping? Come on.
I have to do my own. Yeah, I get to. I love it.
Yeah, right. You're like, actually, I outsource that.
So I had this job and I kept it for a year. I think it was about a year. And I told myself when I got to the point of like, okay, things are starting to get kind of claustrophobic. Like I have this job and then I'm full Tuesdays and Thursdays and I don't seem to have any wiggle room. I can't seem to grow. And I'm always a proponent of growing and building the business you actually want to own. So if I don't want to take calls on Fridays and the only day available I have is Friday, I should not take calls on Fridays because eventually down the road, I'm going to be kind of irritated with myself that I didn't create that space for myself. So I told myself I was going to raise my prices and open my schedule for Mondays. And the first, when I got that first client, I would quit my job. And I put that out there, I don't know, on a Monday morning. And by Monday at 9, I had my first potential client book in. And so I quit my job that day.
Wow. That's awesome.
I gave my 2 weeks notice and I said, that's it. Like, I promised myself that's the guidelines I was setting for myself. And it feels like a big jump, but it was really great timing and a great way to manage that.
I really love that you gave yourself some specific parameters so that you didn't live in the emotion, right? Which, not to say that leading into our emotions is not a bad thing, but there are times where it's like, gosh, we can really live and ride in our emotions, and we need some of those grounding things of, yes, I got the client, and then your emotions come in and go, yeah, but
what if I could get one more?
Maybe you need one more, or it wasn't quite at the price point you thought, or or whatever. Like, you don't know how long it's going to last.
A little more, yeah.
So I love that you did that. That's, again, as people think about both starting a business, and this was a piece of advice my parents gave me. They ran their own businesses as well. My grandparents ran their own businesses. So they're like, you have to know when also your exit point is. So that could be exiting your corporate job and going in, but you also need to know if there's an exit point in running your business too. Or sometimes the exit point just means to not necessarily that you're going to give up on it, but that you're going to shift it, drastically. Like, I'm going to stick to this. And that's always been very helpful for me to lean into, because also as a business owner, sometimes I get really stuck to an idea that just isn't working. And it's okay to say, thought that product was going to be amazing and it's not, and so I'm going to give it up now. But the only way I've been able to do that is by setting specific parameters and saying, this isn't about my emotions in this case. It's about the numbers aren't talking, or the goals I set aren't there.
That's a huge, huge thing, because we talk about that a lot in my business, is if you make the decision once ahead of time, then you've already decided, and you don't have to decide again in the moment where the emotions are different or the energy is different. When you have like that clear vision, there's some clarity about your business, and you say, you make this decision, and then that's the decision, and you don't have to revisit it. You don't have to question yourself. You can just trust that the version of you that made that decision was operating at your highest intentions, and go with it. Because sometimes we talk about feelings over facts, and we want to make decisions based on facts and not feelings.
Yeah, that's have you ever done like the 16 personalities, or where you evaluate, so based on Myers-Briggs, but it's a little different?
I cannot remember what I am. There's a T and a J in there, but I don't know what the...
Okay. Ooh, we might be the same. So there's the T and the F, the thinker and the feeler, right? And just because you're a thinker doesn't mean you don't have feelings. And just because you're a feeler doesn't mean you can't think, right? But I do often think like we have to lean into those different nuances at different points in our business. It is important to have. So if you are a feeler, it doesn't mean that you can't. So often I hear people who are on that more feeler end of personality, and they're like, oh, I just, I go with my gut all the time. I'm like, that's fine. Like, sometimes I wish I went more with my gut, honestly. I think there's a time for that. But being able to marry those together and be like, okay, how am I feeling about this? But also, what are the facts telling me, and how can I mix those together is so valuable.
I really do feel like both. There is a good mixture of both, because let's just say, for instance, this is a big place where feelings come into the equation, is when people are setting price points for their offer.
Oh my gosh, and yes.
I always say, pick a price point that you feel comfortable talking about. Because if you have put it too high for your own, for your own safety, for your own emotional safety, you won't ever mention it. You won't ever talk about it. You won't.
Or it'll be very apologetic. The tone inflection will be like a question, like 5,500. Yes.
How does this sound to you?
Yeah.
You're looking for that external validation. And when it comes to pricing, you really have to embody that, believe it, and have, just the trust in yourself. And that internal validation that this is the right price. And some clients or potential clients may choose not to because of that. And that's okay.
Totally. Yes, that's good. And one other thought on that, and then I want to ask you about CFO mindset, right? Mm-hmm. To dive in that more. But one more thought on the pricing is, this was a great piece of advice given to me. I worked for a stint with a company called Bulu Box, and we worked with extremely large clients. So it was like Disney and Crayola and Discovery Channel. And it was one of the pieces of advice that the CFO gave to many of us is we would need to go in and we would need to talk numbers, and they were very large numbers. Mm-hmm. And he was like, practice it, like literally practice saying, this is going to cost $4,365,082. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to say it, right? Without having the tone inflection is a real thing. And so like practicing, like, are you going to stumble over it? It sounds like such a granular piece of advice, but it was very helpful to be able to go through. There'd be pitch decks and things like that. You needed to be able to say the number with confidence without a question mark inflection on it. So that was just very helpful too, is maybe you are comfortable, but you're still struggling with saying it, like get in front of a mirror or get in front of a friend and literally practice saying the number, because it makes a big difference.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, I do a lot of practicing. I'll be down here in my office and I'll just be standing in the middle of the room, like talking to no one, because communication is a huge part of my business. And communication is really not, I should say vocal communication is really not a natural skill for me. I really have had to practice and practice and practice some more and get comfortable, with the sound of my own voice and confidence. And, there is a difference with speaking with a smile on your face and not having a smile on your face.
Yes.
Your voice sounds different.
It's a real thing.
It is a real thing. And so I definitely do that. And I recommend people who are just getting started, marketing their business, talking about their business to practice. It feels awkward at first. It's super awkward. But
yeah,
the more you do it,
like, don't walk in on me right now. Kat, why are you judging me? Like, go in the other room.
I remember the very first Facebook Live I did for my business. I waited until 11 o'clock at night when all of my family had gone to bed. And I was in the dark in the dining room, and I'm like, hello, everyone. This is...
I love it.
It's probably still out there somewhere. I didn't delete it. I want to put it out. I want to keep it there so I can go back and look at it someday.
That is good. Okay, well, this is a great segue into, like, one, what does it mean to have a CFO mindset? And maybe two, like sprinkling in some of those, what are some of those things? If I have a great CFO mindset, what should I maybe not be handing off?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So talk to us about that.
Well, I could talk about that all day. So.
I'll bet.
So really my target audience, my clientele, they're mostly solopreneurs working for themselves, by themselves, and or very small businesses. I do get family businesses where, it might be a husband and wife team, or any variation of that. But we're talking like less than 10 people are usually the types of businesses I'm working for or with. And a CFO in general, is a C-suite position. It's for a much bigger company, and people at the level of new businesses or small businesses, they are doing everything. They are the CEO, the CFO, they're the marketer, they're the janitor, they're everything. And I wanted to present my business with the word CFO mindset to connect with people who say, well, I'm not a CFO. I'm probably not going to be a CFO for real. I'm not going to be I'm not going to sit in the C-suite, but I want to have that mentality of someone who really understands and feels confident and comfortable having money conversations with people I need to have money conversations with. We hire CPAs, we might hire a bookkeeper, we hire lawyers, and those people are having conversations about our money. Yes. And I want you to feel confident being in that room and having that conversation too. Instead of letting other people talk about your money, I want you to be in that conversation talking about your money.
I really like that. And this is, I mean, literally something that Michaela and I have talked about numerous times. And I don't want to make an overgeneralization here, that it might come across wrong. So warning, this might come across wrong. But I feel as if men often present more confident in this area than women. I feel like as women, I know I kind of want to know something 100% before I feel ready to really like jump in and talk about it, versus men. And they say this with like applying for jobs, that men will apply for a job with, you know, half or less of the skill sets needed. And women are like, I can't check every box. I'm not even going to apply.
Right.
I can't cite the source on that. I just know it is out there. So feel free to fact check that. But
no, there was a newspaper article in the Omaha World Herald not that long ago. That
great.
Like I cut it out, I highlighted it online, and it said that women, when they were asked questions, would often answer, "I don't know." And when they took away the option to choose "I don't know," where the women had to answer, they answered right, but they didn't have the confidence in their answer.
Oh, interesting. So interesting, right? And I don't want this to I don't want women to be like, oh my gosh, we're awful. Like, this is terrible. Like, no, that's not the point. I think it's more of Michaela and I have really been challenging ourselves a lot to say, well, if we don't feel confident, let's get confident. If we need the information, I'm going to watch a video on it. Or let's invite people in who do feel confident and ask them, just be like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, can you help us understand this? And I got to tell you, like, we have talked with some amazing folks, both men and women, who are like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I can explain this insurance thing to you, or how you might want to think about planning for a building credit, you know, and things like that. And gosh, as you have those conversations, it's so much less intimidating, right? So much less intimidating.
Yeah. And I think the thing that people in general who are reaching out to me, right, who don't have the confidence, or want more confidence, I should say, who kind of feel like, I don't know anything, I don't know how to do this. I always say, money is everywhere. You use money all the time. You're already doing this. You have a business. You are running a business, and you are spending your money. You are earning your money. You already know the answers, but you might not know the words, or you might not understand the technical accounting concepts, but you already know. And so one of the things that I feel like sets me apart, and is special about me, and I think it comes from all of the experience I've had, and the fact that I have worked in a lot of small businesses where I am talking to the owner. You know, I wasn't a staff accountant, you know, with 3 accountants ahead of me. I was talking to the owner, and I have a natural ability to explain and communicate these concepts in a way that a business owner understands, because they already know. They're already doing it. They might not be the one doing the data entry, you know, into the accounting system.
Totally.
And they might not feel confident that they know what they're doing with their financial reports, but they're already doing it. And so it's just a little bit of a fine tune, and giving them a little bit more information so that they can have that confidence that, oh, I am doing this.
Yes.
Oh, I already am doing this. I am doing it right.
We actually, because I was feeling uncertain, and we knew we wanted to just take some bigger steps within our business, we did hire somebody to help, who comes in basically like a CFO, but she would educate at the same time. And the whole deal was, as long as you need, right? Like no like long obligations, or like we couldn't hire a CFO, and she was great. And I'm already seeing with you, like, great at saying, actually, you're on the right track. And it was so affirming. Like, it was worth hiring somebody. And so as people are thinking about this, I'm like, it's worth hiring someone like Becky. if for no other reason, to realize I'm on track, right? Like there were so many things where she said to me, actually, you're already doing that. And I was like, oh, I wasn't sure if it was right. She goes, yep, you're right on track. And she goes, you could think about tweaking this one thing, but it's not mandatory. You could do it this way or that way. And oh my gosh, that alone was
Mm-hmm.
worth like the confidence building versus spinning in my head. And it was one of the things my business partner, she was like, yeah, I have no problem with us spending the money for you to know that you're doing it right. Um, so that was huge for us as far as like working with somebody who does, similar types of things as what you're helping business owners with. And one of the funny things was we've adopted a profit first mentality, which is just kind of a system, a way of doing things.
I use it too.
Aha, okay, there we go. Awesome. Well, we're gonna have to like nerd out on that then. But as I was learning about that system and reading through the book, audio books and things like that about process, we were already doing it. I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't know that there was like a framework and a couple of small tweaks, and I was like, oh, okay, but it was basically what we were doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, just an example, right? Where
I always say when people ask when they're new and they want advice, but they're not ready to hire and work with me, I always say, go get the Profit First book. And if you are not a book reader, read the first 3 chapters because that's where the meat of the information is.
mm-hmm.
And it will change your life. It'll change the way you look at your business, and it'll change the way you deal with the money if you do it, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you decide to follow it. And I have definitely recommended it to clients. I've helped them create their own little Profit First spreadsheets and set up that simple system and process so that they feel like, okay, once a week or once every other week, whenever they're going to do it, I'm going to set this money aside and it's just going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I feel like we're overusing the word confidence, but that's really what it is.
It is.
Of just seeing that money sitting there in your bank account, whether it's taxes or profit or whatever name you want to give it, is so affirming, and it really just makes you relax.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes business a little more joyful when you don't have that worry, that financial worry spinning in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And, one of the things that I'm curious at what your answer is, but oftentimes I hear people, oh, I'm not big enough for that yet. And I definitely grew up with a mentality from my parents of like, if you have a dollar and you're not telling your dollar where to go, then it doesn't matter. Because if you can't manage $1, you
Mm-hmm.
can't manage $100, you can't manage $1,000. And so they were always very adamant about that. So that kind of built in of like, you're never too small. You can know your numbers even if your numbers are 0. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how 0 are we? You know what I mean? And what does it take to not be 0? Like, so often I hear that from people. Oh yeah, I'll worry about that when I'm, actually making like real money. And I'm like, the money spends. So
I'm with you. The sooner you can do it in your business, the better off you will be long term. And here's when I first learned about Profit First, when I first came across it, I went through a stint where I was just kind of burned out. This was 2015-ish, 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I had left my job at that point. I was working for someone else. I left that job and I was just like, I don't know what I want to do, but what I do know is I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to deal with anyone. And I want to work on my own schedule. And I need this to be the easiest job I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to start cleaning houses.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I'm like, I want to work as little as possible and still make money. So I don't want this business to start burning through money just because it has it, right? I want this money to be mine. I want this money to come home with me. I want to maximize my take-home pay. So I learned about the Profit First book. I read it, I implemented it. And I will tell you, that was a joyful business. Now, I didn't do it for very long because it is such a physical job.
Right.
My shoulders were hurting, my back was hurting, I was exhausted by the end of the day. But I probably only worked 2 or 3 days a week, and I only worked for probably 5 hours a day. And the amount of money I was able to take home, and because the business didn't need that much money, it was just me and it was just some cleaning solution, right? That I was just like, wow, I was blown away by the profitability of that business. And it really gave me just a different insight into a different kind of business and what business can actually do for the owner when you're intentional with the money from the beginning. And I mean, it's weird to put $10, into this other account, but eventually every pile grows one pebble at a time, right? Like you don't get $1 million without having one first.
No.
And
it's that practice too. I mean, just the muscle, you're exercising a muscle of, it was something, I mean, growing up, we grew up in church and the idea of tithing and giving back, things like that. And so literally, like, my parents would hand out quarters to each of us and you're like, it's a quarter, it's not, we're not going to like save the world here with a quarter, but it's just that muscle of like, oh, we give. And the same thing with your taxes, with your profit, with your overhead. Like it's the muscle of, I put $1 in that account and I think that is huge. What are some of the things, Becky, you mentioned this early on, I don't want to forget it, but because I think people look for those like practicality things like, okay, now I'm going to leave this podcast today and be like this. What are a couple things that you often find with business where you're like, yeah, you really don't need to hand that off?
So this is going to be a very unpopular thing to say, but you do not need to hand off your bookkeeping until you are probably a $2 million business. So now, are there exceptions? Absolutely, there are exceptions. But a service-based business can easily do your bookkeeping in 20 minutes or less each week if you're $1 million or less in gross revenue. You do not need to outsource 20 minutes or less. Now, the problem is when people who don't know bookkeeping and don't know QuickBooks and don't know what they're doing, they open up this program and it's big. It's big, right? There's a lot
of levers to pull.
There's a lot of stuff going on, and you can literally get to every screen 10 different ways. Like there's a lot of places to click. And the biggest issue is people don't know where to start and they don't know where to finish. And so they just kind of keep doing things and it never feels done, or they never feel like they've done the right things. And so that's one of the first things I teach. So the 3 pillars, if you will, of my business are system, strategy, and support. And you have to have a system first. The system can be anything. It can be a spreadsheet if that's what you want, and if that's what works for you. What I teach is QuickBooks Online because that's what I know, that's what I'm an expert in, and I can make it very easy for you. So I have a process that I teach you. It's essentially a 5-step process. I teach you how to start. I teach you what to do next. I teach you what to do next. And if you do those things in order, everything else is easier. But it's when you start just kind of picking around and clicking from here to here and doing things out of order, for people who don't know the system front and back, you're actually making it harder for yourself.
That makes sense.
So there is a workflow, if you will, that I teach them that they can do in 20 minutes or less. And I have gone back and tested my theory with most of my past clients. And obviously it's not going to be 20 minutes the first time you do it, but once we get you there, it's 20 minutes or less. And most of my clients will report, the popular way to do it is every other week, 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm always like, do it every Friday, do it once a week, I'm a once a week person. That's the way I like to do it. But a lot of people will say, oh, I do it every other week. It takes me 30 minutes and then I move on. Obviously, there's different variations of that. I've had clients who say, I look at it every single day when I get back from lunch. It takes me 2 or 3 minutes to do the things I need to do on that day, and then I move on. So 3 minutes times 5 days a week is 15 minutes. So it still counts.
That's right.
And that's one of the biggest things. And the thing that really, what that makes a difference of is when you're the one spending the money, because you're the business owner. I'm not, you spent the money, you know what you spent it on. You already have the answers. When you hire a bookkeeper, I think what people forget is you still have to communicate with that person.
Yes.
You still have to find a process and create a process where you somehow, whether that's face to face or some automated online way of telling them, this is what I spent that money on. This is what that is, because we don't know. We're not the person who did it. But doing the bookkeeping, that 20 minutes data entry, I know it's not awesome, but we can automate a lot of it. And the parts we can't automate, we can kind of create a process that makes it real easy for you. But then you are seeing it in real life, in real time. And what that does is you will see every month when that subscription that you never use comes across. And you're like, after the third or fifth time, you're like, I just need to cancel that, instead of letting it go for years and years and years, because you don't see it, you don't notice it, you don't pay attention to it. Now, that's not the biggest worry, right? But I've also seen, people who their customer filed a chargeback and they never knew because they were never looking. And 6 months later, when they go to clean up their bookkeeping, they're like, what's this? Well, now it's too late. You didn't get the email, you didn't get the letter, you didn't care, you didn't know what it was. Chargeback information is hard to decipher. I don't know if you've ever had a charge.
Yes. So a number of these things, I'm literally like ticking off in my head. Like, yes. So our system, I do enter all of the expenses. So we do have some help with what we do with our books, but I enter all of the expenses. Like, that's just, it didn't make sense to try to communicate with. And yes, I mean, so often those subscriptions can add up, dang it. Like, and we have a lot of them in our business, just the type of business we have. We have so many subscriptions. So yeah, I mean, it does add up. And so I'm just gonna be like vulnerable here for a minute. My husband and I got off track with doing our personal ones. And we got charged for 2 dental insurances for a year. And I could just die. I mean, not truly die, but I'm like, we're doing great over here with the business, but we try to sit down together, and personal and business life sometimes don't mirror each other. And what it was, I won't go into this huge story, but here, you can cancel, just so you guys know, okay, if you need this advice, you can cancel your dental insurance, but if you don't cancel the reoccurring payment, they will auto say, oh, you didn't actually mean to cancel it. So they're like, oh yeah, but you've been covered with 2 insurances for a year. And I'm like, but that's not what I wanted. So by the way, read the fine print, get all the way to the bottom. I thought we were canceled. We weren't. I was seeing transactions come in. I'd forgotten which dental we were using. I just saw it every time. I was like, yep, dental, that makes sense. And we paid for 2.
And, it happens, and it's human. Everybody does it. Nobody's perfect. And nobody expects you to be perfect. But when you really are, when you're in the system, right? When you're in the system, when you're looking at those things, it makes everything make more sense.
Totally.
Because you really start to understand the timing of payments and what's happening. And you just kind of have this second knowledge base that you wouldn't have otherwise, because you are, not only are you the one, okaying the charges or spending the money, you're also the one recording it. And something else happens when you do that in your mind. And it's just more clarity. It's like, I guess, did I really need this? Oh, I forgot I had this similar software. I guess I need to cancel one, that's a very common one.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of things, but the chargeback is huge. I've seen a lot of businesses not even know they had a chargeback because they
Yep.
weren't paying any attention. The money came in, and that's what
Yep.
they're paying attention to, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they just did not have a grasp on that
Right. We
at
did
all.
have that. And I will say, yes, because I enter all of those in, I'm like, hey, hold up. Like, what is
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
And that's significant. I mean, and it was, it was an honest mistake.
right.
It wasn't a big, they wanted to make it right. Like it was nothing wild in that regard, but gosh, I'm glad we caught it because that's revenue lost. And it's
Right.
literally revenue off of your line that's lost.
I would say probably more than 50% of the time, chargebacks are not malicious.
No.
It's, but if you don't address it, I mean, that is such an opportunity to communicate with that client, and solve that problem. So let's say they really did do a chargeback. Let's say they really were unsatisfied and they
Mm-hmm.
did a chargeback because they weren't getting resolution anywhere else in your business.
Mm-hmm.
What an opportunity, right? To talk to that person and understand and try to come up with a solution, even if you don't get your money back, right? It's a learning experience, and it's an ability to fill that gap. Um, Whatever happened, right? Whatever happened with that client. But a lot of times, it could be non-sufficient funds. It's not generally not malicious. Maybe that person had 2 dental premiums taken out of their
Yeah.
account and they didn't
For
realize
Pete's
it.
sake.
And they thought the money was going to be there and they didn't mean to do that. And they're not paying attention just as much as you're not paying attention. And then nobody even knows that happened, right? And so, yeah, it is really important. Now, we were talking about other things to not hand off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I want to say I'm a huge proponent of having a CPA, like having someone, a local professional accountant who helps you file your taxes and understand your own tax burden. So this does not take the place of that. That's what I really want to make that clear. Having a CPA understand your personal income picture, that's a big picture. It's not just your business. If you're married or have a spouse, you have
Yes.
that. There's all sorts of things people can have and be involved in that will make a difference in their tax status and what they owe. And I really think you should have someone who is up to date on tax codes and laws and write-offs and credits, to help walk you through that. And so I want to point out that I'm not saying that you should not outsource that part of the financial.
Mm-hmm.
Having someone, on your team, whether it's an employee or someone you're like a CPA, right, that you're working with, to consult with about your business is super important.
Yes. I'm just gonna second everything that you say today. This has been great. I'm
I'm
like,
so glad
yes,
we're on the
yes,
same
yes, yes.
page.
So we do work with a CPA, and she and her team are wonderful. And we've worked with various CPAs over the years, and I have found that we have outgrown some.
Mm-hmm.
I've also found that we have been not grown up enough for some, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Finding that right fit is like a sweet spot. And so I was just going to say, not something I've learned. Don't be afraid to interview somebody new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're just feeling like you're not 100% if the CPA is the right fit. And again, it's all of the CPAs we worked with have been wonderful, like
Mm-hmm.
no complaints, right? But weren't always the right fit at the right time. Just
Right.
the way things, work within businesses, you change, you grow, the needs you have, the way you're thinking about your business changes. So yes, just gonna throw that in there as well as, I'm not saying like don't be loyal, but at the same time, I've seen people hang on to a CPA. Seen them hang on to a lawyer, a bookkeeper, etc., because it feels scary to them or they're uncertain. They're like, well, they must just know. I'm not saying they don't know.
Right.
But it's okay to be like, I'm not sure if it's the right fit still.
Right.
I'm going to interview some, and you might decide they are. But that has been huge for us, is having a CPA, and she has literally saved us money, and she has literally changed the way that we've, done some of our accounting and business, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's taken time to find that right person. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Very important. Very important. I've heard a lot of times people will come to me very dissatisfied with their CPA, and I think it is. I always talk to them about the expectations, like that their expectations were maybe not in line with what that CPA actually offers, because
Mm-hmm.
some people will say, well, no one ever told me, I didn't know I had to do
Yes.
this. And why would they have noticed that my books were a mess, or that type of a thing? And they feel
Mm-hmm.
very almost betrayed, right, by this person. And I gently say, the CPAs of the world are not our small business teachers. Um,
Right.
that's not what their purpose is. And there might be some really awesome CPAs that do take that role, who do really find joy and in educating their clients. But there are a lot of CPAs that they want to do the work of a CPA, which is file your taxes and understanding tax code and things like that. And they aren't, maybe not, maybe saying they aren't interested, but that's just not the role they're playing in
Mm-hmm.
your business. And if your expectation is, I'm going to hire the CPA and they're going to make sure I'm doing everything correct, and they're going to make sure my books are absolutely pristine, and they're going to make sure that I take advantage of all of these write-offs, and you never communicate that expectation with them for them to have the choice to say, no, that's not what I
Mm-hmm.
do. Um, that is where disappointment really comes in.
Yes, the unmet expectations that were never voiced.
Yes.
That is huge for sure. And gosh, I mean, and isn't that the worst in our businesses?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody, we've had people who think that we do things we don't do,
Yeah.
and that always leads to an awkward conversation or a difficult conversation that needs to be had. But gosh, the longer you avoid it, and don't say, that's not what we do. Can I connect you with someone who
Yes.
does? Or for the client to say, I thought you did this. And I'm like, I had no idea that you thought we did that. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have the open communication and not avoid it just because you feel like, oh, I'm not sure if I have the vocabulary. I can't tell you how many times I say, I'm not exactly sure what I'm talking about. And this might sound kind of funny to say. I will say this to people, though. I'm not exactly sure what I'm talking about, but I am an intelligent person, and I know there's something here that I'm not sure how to ask. Can you help me with what I'm trying to ask? And so often people are like, yeah, I think I know where you're headed. Does this sound right? Are you trying to ask me this? And I'm like, not quite, but almost. And we get there, right? By literally just saying,
I,
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be asking. I just know there's something there. And I know so many business owners
mhm.
often feel that way. Business owners tend to be very astute. They're smart, intelligent, quick people whose brains are often working super duper fast. And they have a general sense of things, and they're moving, right? So they may not dive into the nuances of what, but they're like, I know there's something here. There's like this tax credit thing that I read about a thing, and I'm not sure if it's completely, and if it applies. And, I'm like, just ask
Yeah.
and be like, I don't know if this is a thing or not, but they're saving money over there. How do I do it?
Yeah.
A CPA will
Does
help you
not
figure that
apply
out.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this friend, or I know this person who's doing
Yes.
this. Can I do that too?
Yeah, and they're
Or
like, actually, money laundering's not usually accepted. So, oh, well, dang it. I didn't know that's what that was. They're just printing money over there. Like, how do we do that? Oh,
exactly.
geez. Okay, so speaking of this, squirrel brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I
Mm-hmm.
can hear a lot of business owners, I literally can hear them already saying, like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll spend 3 minutes after lunch. Uh huh, right.
Yeah.
No, like, how do you stay focused, especially when managing your finances, especially if it's not your favorite thing, when you're distracted by this cool marketing campaign you want to work on, or making those 8 client calls, or the fire that's back there that feels, much more important? How do you help people figure out how
Well,
to manage that?
first, I want to say that sometimes it's not the most important thing to do. And that is true, because if you are a brand new business and you haven't yet mastered, or mastered is a strong word there, but haven't mastered consistent sales, or getting that message across, or learning how to market your business and make sales, bookkeeping is not the first thing you should be thinking about. Like, you should still kind of keep track of stuff, or keep a little, I'll do that later, because your business isn't really so big that you aren't going to be able to sit down 3 months from now and get this caught up pretty easily, even if you're just putting it in a spreadsheet, right?
Fair.
So I always tell people, I'm not the first person you should talk to when you open a business. Now, I have had clients who say, I'm opening a business and I want to do this right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love that. And I do work with them, but it is harder to teach someone when there's nothing to teach them with, right?
Totally.
Because then we're just talking about concepts, and talking about concepts is nice, sometimes, but it's not going to get the job done, right? Because it's not
Right.
your money. And so there is a time where things do take precedence. Bookkeeping is important. It's rarely urgent, except for at the end of the year, or the end of the quarter, or whenever that self-imposed deadline is, right?
Yes.
So it's a lot easier to do it on a regular basis. And one of the reasons it's easier is because you still remember.
Right. Oh my gosh.
You still
Preach this one,
remember
okay?
what happened. Literally, that is a big component. If
Yes.
you keep your bookkeeping pushed to the side and building up and creating this little mountain, and you decide that you're going to deal with it in June, instead of, now I got 5 months to do something that happened in February, you aren't going to have a clue,
Right.
unless it was a routine, regular thing. These one-off situations, you aren't going to remember. That's a fact. You
Becky,
just won't.
sometimes I don't remember from week to week. And then you're looking at the little register and it says, ACH XYZ
Yeah.
Bob something something. I'm like, what
And you're
was
like, what
that? What
was,
did I spend on the 18th for $45.92?
yeah,
And I'm like sending an email. Did you spend $45.92 on like what? I don't know. And it's a distraction and it costs us more money.
yeah,
I'm just going to say that real quick too. Like doing that and sending the email, and then she stops what she's doing and then she looks to see what it is. And then I Google it really quick and all that stuff. We have a billable hourly rate.
mm-hmm.
And I just spent at
Right.
least half of that hour
Yeah.
on figuring out what the heck a $42 charge was for. And we bill more than $42 in half an hour. You know what I mean? Like I literally just lost a billable hour.
Yeah. So yes, it's going to be easier, it's going to be faster, and it's going to be more accurate, if you do it on a regular basis. So there is a sense of discipline, right? And that's not always fun or enticing, for anyone, let alone, just the entrepreneur brain who's a creative, who wants to do something new. So I do recommend telling people, pick a day of the week or a day of the month, whatever it is you're going to do, and put it on your calendar. And I always tell them, if you are a person whose self-imposed deadlines mean nothing to, right? I'm one of
Yes.
those people. I can set a self-imposed deadline, but when it comes and goes, it doesn't matters not to me, right? It's like,
Yes.
it doesn't matter at all. There are other people who create self-imposed deadlines, and it might as well be the IRS telling them to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, so it kind of depends on your own inner workings as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do something regularly, it gets easier. And when things are easy, they're easier to do, and we're more accepting of easy things, because
Yes.
it's like, oh, I can do that in 15 minutes. Let me just do it right now.
Yes.
So if I say I'm always going to do, my data entry, my bookkeeping on Fridays, then on Friday, I don't do anything until that's done. And there's other more fun things for me to do on Fridays, but sit down and do it. And
Financial
sometimes
Fridays, friends.
Financial
Financial
Fridays,
Fridays.
yes. Sometimes we need fun little tools like these little, this is a
Oh,
time,
yeah.
it's a clock. It's a clock. It'll tell me what time it is, but I can also set it for a timer. So it's 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, and 3 minutes. And it
Yeah,
just
and
sits,
it's like a cube.
it's a cube. Yep. And it just sits right on my desk, and I can, for things that, mine isn't bookkeeping because I happily do that. But mine is other things that it's like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Okay, I'm going to set this timer for 10 minutes, and I'm going to work on this for 10 minutes. Everything's on do not disturb until that timer goes off. And you can get so much stuff done if you play those little games with yourself.
Yes.
You just have to kind of know what works for you and be accepting of the things that don't work for you. So
Yes.
I'm a person whose self-imposed deadlines don't work for. So I don't set them because
Mm-hmm.
they just make me feel bad about myself. It's like, I'll get it done when I get it done. And then eventually there will come a point where I'm like, this really needs to get done. And then the
Mm-hmm.
deadline doesn't feel self-imposed, right? It
Right.
feels external.
That it's all huge, and I love that practice of setting the time aside. And just from personal experience, I set aside time on Friday, and I don't always use it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there, and it reminds me that I need to.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes I'm people. Here's a misconception about me. People think I'm very rigid and very I do things always on time. No, like I start writing in print, end in cursive, go back to print again. It can be kind of all over the place, but I try, right? Like I've trained myself. And so I do put time on the calendar. So for those of you out there who might be beating yourself up, right? I put on the calendar and I don't use it every time, but it reminds me, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that's right. I need to do that this week. And I might move it. I might miss it, but it pops up the very next week. And when I see it the next week, I'm like, now I've got 2 weeks to do.
I didn't do
Okay.
that this week. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge difference. And then I also think about Becky, a friend of mine, she was on the podcast as well, Lisa Even, and she's just a couple episodes back. Maybe I'll get it linked here. But she talked about how joy is my job, and she talks about happy or crappy to happy. So if this feels crappy to you, doing your books, how can you make it happy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you listen to great music and you blast it? Do you stand up and do jumping jacks after every transaction or 10 transactions? Hey, everyone, why not? Squats? I mean, let's get it done. Does it help for you to have your cat sitting on your desk and, you talk to your cat while you're doing it? Are you going to eat an amazing, dessert? This is when you do chocolate. Are you going to pour yourself a glass of wine?
Yeah.
What is it for you where you can make it more enjoyable? So for me, I always put earbuds in and I just listen to music I really like. And it's a moment to myself to listen to whatever I want to. That isn't something our 4-year-old likes to listen to. It's
I
great.
think I think also something to think about as a business owner. Sometimes we get stuck in the weeds of the doing and the data entry and the, oh, I don't want to do this, because it is, I'm not going to lie, it can be boring. If
Totally.
you have a lot to do, it's very repetitive, and it can kind of, kind of make you feel like, why isn't this done?
Mm-hmm.
The reason we do the bookkeeping is not the end. It's not the finish line. It's the start line,
Mm.
because it's the details from those transactions that create our financial reports and creates those things that allow us as business owners to look at and get real information and up to date information about our businesses. So if your
Yeah.
bookkeeping isn't done for 5 months, that tells me you haven't looked at a financial statement in over 5 months. Because it wouldn't be worth it
Wouldn't
to
be
look at
accurate.
it. It wouldn't be accurate, and it wouldn't matter, right? Because there's too much data that's missing. And so if you can think of it as, I really want the information, because the information helps me grow my business or make better business decisions or see the truth about the financial state of my business, then I feel like doing that 15 minutes, literally we're talking about 15 minutes here, of bookkeeping a week. It's the output is worth so much more than the input, so much more.
I am with you on that. And like from, personal stories, I guess, with that, I have been with our business a couple months behind and pulling reports. And then you know what I'm doing, Becky, in order to help? Because I have a business partner. So I'm also accountable to her, right? She's trusting me to keep track of these things. And then I have to go through and be like, okay, but this over here is an account receivable, even though I know we already received it, but it hasn't been entered, blah, blah, blah. So I'm doing all of this work in order to be as accurate as possible. And then I have to have the conversation with her of like, within, $1,000 or so, like, okay, and sometimes, like you said, that's where you're at with your business. You're rocking and rolling in other things, and you're like, the approximation is going to be okay right now. But gosh, dang it, it's so nice to just be able to say, this is where we're at, this is what we have, this is what's coming in, this is it. And we have literally made giant decisions in our business with that. So 2 decisions we've made is, 1, we realized we were working ourselves to the bone and we didn't need to. Right? We were like, we have enough for what we want to be doing with our lives right now. We don't need to launch another thing. We don't need to, and because up to that point, before we looked at our reports, we didn't know. And we had lived in such a world for so many years of like, gotta get new business, right? Yes. And we were like, you know what? Let's give ourselves a little time off for these other priorities that we have. That was huge. Yeah. Also have made decisions on the flip side of that, where we looked at it and we're like, well, that doesn't look so hot. We're like, okay. But I will tell you, it sure helps to know if it doesn't look so hot, crazy, how many zeros not so hot, right?
Yeah.
Are we talking hundreds, thousands, couples of thousands, tens of thousands? And gosh, when you know that, there's a big difference between, all right, what's it going to take to get where we want to be? If you don't know, I feel like my brain goes to the worst case scenario. I'm like, we are tens of thousands of dollars from where we need to be. And sometimes we look at it and we're like, no, it's only couples of thousands of dollars from it. That's a big difference. That's a huge difference in, the hustle, if you will, that it's going to take to get where you want to be. So
it is. I will say I am also a person who goes to worst case scenario, right?
We're $1 million behind.
Oh my God, I'm never going to make it, right?
Yes.
And if your bookkeeping and all that is up to date, and you are looking at your financial reports and you know how to interpret them, at least in the most simple way, right? You can know when things are starting to go downhill instead of realizing at the bottom of the hill.
Totally.
Because the bottom of the hill is when there's either no money left, or it feels like, oh my gosh, I can't pay this bill, or oh my gosh, I realized I haven't received income, in weeks, or whatever it is. And it becomes a crisis, right? It becomes
way harder.
It's so much harder to come out of that instead of going, oh, there's a little dip. Okay, I can kind of look out. I can look on my calendar. I can see these are the clients that are coming in. This is the income I'm projecting for the next week or month. Things are going to get back on track. Or, gosh, I don't have anything on the books, or I don't have enough on the books. This looks like it's going to turn into a downturn, and I need to do something now, instead of waiting for the bottom to fall out. Right. Which is when a lot of people realize it, is when the bottom falls out.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, yes, have lived all of this, right? Yeah. Like on all ends of it, where you're like, okay, really staying on top of it, feeling on top of the world. Yeah. Haven't been on top of it. The bottom's falling out, has fallen out, and So yes, to all of the things. It is, sometimes I'm like, let's just stop saying that it's fun. I think it's fun to know the story of your business. We're storytellers. That's what we do. We help people connect through story. The numbers are not the story, but they really support the story, right?
Yeah.
Like you can look at that and you can see. It makes me think of things like DNA, right? Like, is DNA the person? Well, no, like their heart and their soul and all these things. But there's a lot of information there, right, that can help you understand. And so it's just it can be really fun. And I think sometimes it is a matter of just saying, you know what, this is the data entry or whatever. Yeah, but it's kind of fun. Like you're running a business. That's the fun part,
Well, I
right?
always say it's always fun to count your money. Like
Totally. Like
it's always fun.
Scrooge, where he's like, dirk, 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 with all of his coins on top of each other.
Well,
Wouldn't that be great if we actually still dealt in like bags of coins?
I had a client who was kind of naturally bent towards the negative when it came to money, right? Like I'm not saying about everything, but just
Totally.
had, just like it's not enough, it's never going to be enough type of a mentality,
Yeah.
right? And so she just didn't want to look. And I don't want to say that because people who come to me, they do want to know. It just felt a little harder for her to get on that path.
Totally.
She had desire to be better, to know more, and to feel confident. She just was struggling to get there. And in her mind, looking at her financial reports, to her was like, oh, it should have been more. I wish it was more. I'm never going to reach this lofty goal I set for myself. This feels hard, that type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, why don't we, instead of looking at it like that, change it to this is the evidence that we are succeeding, because we get to see we have, $50,000 in gross revenue. And what that means is however many people have decided they want what you're selling, right?
Yeah.
And you don't get to $50,000 in gross revenue by accident. You
Nope.
might get to $10,000 in gross revenue by accident.
Totally. Yes.
But once you kind of hit that $50,000 mark, you have enough evidence that this is a viable product, right? Or a viable service, that people want to buy this, and you have a way to sell it to them on a repeated level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, let's look at it as evidence of our success up to this point. You've come from here and now we're here. We don't have to look at this and go, why aren't I there? Because you aren't there yet. You're still
Right.
here, but this
Right.
is, and I think sometimes it is an internal mindset that we need to kind of just change that perspective a little bit. And sometimes we just need someone to show us what that other perspective is, because our
Yes.
perspective is so ingrained into our brain that even if we want to change it, we don't know what to change it to, right? We don't have enough evidence of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of what I help people with as well, is just having another viewpoint of your business.
That's huge. And so that is you're just great at these segues. You just do this all the time, I can tell. The practicing is paying off. You said you practice.
Yes, I do practice a lot.
You're great. Tell us like what you do offer. What do you do? If people want to engage with you, right? Like, what does that look like? And of course, we'll put links, to being able to connect with you in that. But what is like the best way to connect with you? Who are you looking to work with? What can they expect?
Okay. So first of all, if you want to connect with me, you can go to my website, which is just my name. It's Becky-Edwards.com. And there's all sorts of ways you can connect with me there. I'm also on Facebook, and I always tell people my DMs are open. You can
Perfect.
come on in and say hi. And you can even say, I don't know what to ask, but I know I want to talk to you.
Yes.
And that's okay too. I'll get the conversation started. So what I do is I have a couple of different offerings, and I started with one-on-one coaching. So it's just like this, me and you, sitting on our screens with Zoom, and there's no one else. It's a private conversation, and I am leading you through setting up a accounting system. And if you already have one, we're just going to make sure that you're using it in the most efficient manner. I'm going to teach you the process. We're going to talk about what you're already doing and tweak that a little bit to make sure that you're just doing it in the most efficient, fastest way.
Love that.
I'm
already like, and sign me up.
Once we get past that, the system, we go into the strategy, which is cash flow. And cash flow is a conversation that kind of feels like I should know what that means, but I'm not really sure if I do know what that means, right? Mm-hmm. And so cash flow is literally the movement of money in your business. And you can have fast cash flow, you can have slow cash flow. Some people call it negative, some people call it good or bad, whatever words you're using, right? You know when cash flow is good because it's easy. You get money in and you spend money and there's always money there, right? When you need to spend it, it's always there. That's good cash flow. Bad cash flow would be when you feel like I don't have enough money to pay this person. I should have enough money to pay this person. When I look at my P&L, it says I'm profitable, but for some reason, I'm not experiencing the ability to have that excess money in my business. Why? Why does it feel like this? And so we create cash flow strategies, one of which is profit first. So profit first is a cash flow strategy. And cash flow strategies help you intentionally use your money to achieve the financial goals you set for yourself. Mm-hmm. So some people want to create personal wealth, right? I start a business because I want to make as much money as I can because for whatever reason, your reason is awesome with me, right? Like I'm not here to say your reason is good or bad. I want you to achieve your goals, whatever they are. So if you say I want to maximize my take-home pay so that I can either invest it or put it in a retirement account or buy property or whatever it is, I want you to do that. And I'm going to show you how to do that with the money in your business. So we're going to be very intentional with creating a cash flow strategy that is designed to achieve that goal so that it can feel like your business is doing what you wanted your business to do, right?
Right.
So we start the business to do this thing. And then somewhere along the line, we just are cogs in a wheel and we don't know what's happening. It's like, I thought this would be better. And it's kind of sucks, right? Mm-hmm. And so other cash flows, other people might say, I want to create a big business that another big business will buy. That's what I want to do. I want to build with acquisition in mind. And so we create cash flow strategies that do that reinvest into your business so that you can grow. Some people might say, I want to do a little bit of both, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a solopreneur forever. I want to have employees. I want to serve more clients. But I also don't need to be Starbucks, right? Yeah. I'm okay with a local business that's doing really, really well, supporting my lifestyle and improving my lifestyle. So then we set up cash flow strategies that do that. And I think that is the most exciting thing about money in your business. And it's the most exciting thing about what I do is when people start to realize that they are doing the thing they set out to do.
I like that. And for those who aren't familiar, P&L, profit and loss, it's a report that you would pull up. So it just shows what your profit is, what your losses are. And this I think is a really interesting, this sounds so simple, and yet I'm going to point out that sometimes people actually haven't identified what their goal is.
Of course.
So often we fall into business, our accidental businesses. I can't tell you how many times we have conversations on here. I just happened to start a business. And it was more about having a passion for your craft or your service or, And so you're like, oh, and I can charge money for this. Oh, well, yeah, why wouldn't I? And you're not sure what you're building it for, aside from I want to do more of the thing I like, but
Mm-hmm.
knowing what your exit strategy is my exit strategy to accumulate as much personal wealth as possible? Is it to, have employees? Is it to sell it? So often I think businesses don't know, and then all of a sudden the business owner finds themselves with a bunch of employees that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't want,
Yes.
or they've built themselves to a point where they don't have the personal, things that they had hoped for, whether that's time and freedom, but they could be acquired,
Mm-hmm.
or they're on the other end of it where they're like, I really want to be acquired, but I'm, over here buying property because someone, it
Yeah.
just happens so easily where you're not sure. And so I hope people listening that they're hearing you, Becky, of once you know what that goal is, then, someone like Becky can help you figure out what it is, but you might need to just take a moment, like pause even right now. Like, why are you making money? What do you
Yeah.
really want to do with the money? And what are your aspirations? And I say that because I ended up, and a lot of this is going to come back to your core values,
Yeah.
your personal core values, because I had a business partner, my ex-husband, and he was very much about building a very large business. Nothing wrong with that. Because we were business partners together at the time, I was like, okay, well, then that's what I'm attached to and doing. This was not why we got divorced. We got divorced. And as I was evaluating things, okay, what am I going to do next? I'm like, I don't want a really big business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard for me
Mm-hmm.
to admit, because I had pounded it into my head that I was going to grow this big, giant business. We'd get acquired, we'd sell, all the things. That was hard for me to let go of, even though I didn't want it.
Yeah.
So,
I will
just an
say
interesting thing to think about.
the thing with the accidental business, man, that's so common. It's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing this thing and someone says, "Can I buy one?"
Yes.
How much would you charge it to do that? Just sort of like that lady that reached out to me on LinkedIn that said, "Can you help
Mm-hmm.
me set up QuickBooks?" And I'm like, I
Yeah,
guess,
sure.
sure, I guess. And how much would you charge? I don't know. It's like I had no idea. So definitely an accidental business, right? At the beginning. Um, and I always tell people this. If money wasn't important to you in some way, you would not have a business, because having a business is not just performing my hobby on steroids. There's so much more to having a business. If you just wanted
Yes.
to do the thing you wanted to do and you didn't care about money, you would do it for free.
Yeah, then just do it.
Then
It's okay.
right,
Mm-hmm.
donate it, or whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah,
Just
or just do it for fun. Yeah,
just do it for fun.
absolutely.
But money is the leading factor of how these accidental businesses start. It's not an accidental business until you take money for it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And when you take money for it, gosh, you're in business, and the IRS says you're in business, and you don't really have to, there's no hurdles to jump through to
Mm-hmm.
start a business. The IRS makes it very, very easy for you to take money, and then they're like, now you owe us part of that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do much. And so money is important. And some people, I mean, money mindset is a whole topic, right? Like it runs the gamut. And there are people out there who don't want to believe that money is important to them for whatever internal reason
Mm-hmm.
that is. It's like, oh, I want to help people, I want to serve people, or I just really like making this item, or I love the craft of this, and I want to excel, I want to be the best at this craft, but the
Mm-hmm.
money isn't important, but yet I'm charging money
Mm-hmm.
and creating this accidental business. And I'm like, well, somewhere along the line, money was important to you
Mm-hmm.
on some level, and that's okay. I do think that there is a section of humanity that feels shame around wanting money. I am not part of that. You said you're not part of that, but like
No.
I understand it. Like I understand the people who do feel that way, and this is I think you asked me this on the form.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that was the most brilliant, insightful thing I had ever heard from someone is business problems are just personal problems in disguise.
Mm.
And when we
That's
all
like really
have,
good. You might have to say it one more time. That was good. I'm like, oh man, you just hit me right in the gut.
business problems are personal problems in disguise. And I know that I have seen that in myself, and I believe that's true for everybody. Now, your problem might be different than my problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the internal mindset work that I have done since I started this business, I am not the same person that started this business a couple years ago. I am a completely different person. And I had to do all of that stuff, right? I mean, there's mindset work, there's therapy, there's journaling, there's understanding yourself, there's understanding where that thought process came from, where it originated. Can we let it go? Can we accept it? That kind of a thing. One of the things that we have talked about is the way I had to practice speaking to people. This is a very important part of my job, speaking to people. It's what I do all day long. Now, I don't always speak to audiences, but I do speak one-on-one, or I'll present. I do present to groups, and I do speak to audiences now, but I was definitely not comfortable with that on any level. And there was points where it was almost like my voice wouldn't even come out of my mouth, right? It's like,
Interesting. Yeah.
it's like it's getting stuck back there. And it was like a fear of being seen, a fear of being wrong. You had touched on it, like everything needed to be right. I had to have facts to back it up. I had to know that I was right, and that it wasn't just my opinion and things like that, because sharing my opinion, wasn't valued, right? That and so, but that's inside stuff. That's stuff I grew up with. That's stuff society might have told me, and then I really latched onto it, right?
Yeah.
And undoing that, releasing that, really helped me make my business what it is. And so your personal, your business problems could be around communication. It could be around money. It could be around organization. It could be around productivity or efficiency or anything like that. And if you are really stuck with like, oh, I don't want to do that, I can't do that, I'm not going to do it, I always say sometimes business problems are personal problems in disguise, and
Yeah.
dealing with that so that you can move forward.
I really like that a lot. So much. And I mean, I'm literally, as you're talking, I'm like, gosh, I can see that within myself, right?
Yeah.
There are a number of things that are on my like list of like aspirations, what to do, and what's holding me back is exactly a personal thing, right? Like it's exactly a personal thing. It really isn't a business thing for
Yeah.
sure. So, and that's one of the things I think is cool about business owners, and owning a business, if you let it, is a paid personal growth plan.
Wow,
So
that's
you get to
brilliant.
grow personally in wild ways, and people pay you to do it, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of a fun way to look at things as well, is like, thank you for paying me to figure out my life, right? Like, and what's
Yeah,
going on here. So
exactly.
we
Yeah.
clearly could have, I mean, I like money and I like numbers. So I'm not surprised that we're an hour and a half in here.
Yeah.
And I've been saying for a while, I'm like, we need to go long form with the podcast. I'm like, we need 3-hour conversations, because I'm like, we're just scratching the surface here. And I think there's so much for people to know, or to feel more confident and understand. And so as I do wrap us up, just mostly for time's sake, right? But I do hope that folks will reach out to you. And it was one of the things we were talking about, again, how we met, and Jenny, who puts together, she was like, you have to have a conversation with Becky, Because you are so helpful to people. Like that was some of the things she noticed is if somebody has a question, you chime in. If they, they post something on Facebook or whatnot, you're like, hey, here's a couple thoughts on that. And I love that you, though you do value yourself and you're 100% worth hiring, you also have been very helpful to people at multiple levels. And so I appreciate you doing that for people and offering so much great advice today. I mean, I feel like this was a one-on-one, mindset coaching, a CFO mindset coaching here. So I really appreciate that from you, Becky.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, you know what? I don't know how I got sidetracked when we were talking about how you can work with me, but there is one more
Yes.
way.
Okay, great. Yes.
I don't know where that conversation went.
We went all over. It's all right. Let's bring it back.
Okay, so you can work with me one-on-one, and I meet you where you are. So if you're
Okay.
not a beginner, we don't start at the beginning, right? Like we start where you are and we build from there. And so it is a very personal plan, but it always follows the same pattern, right? We start with the system, we go to the strategy, goal setting, that kind of thing. I think we were talking about goal setting. That's how we got
where we ended up. Yep.
That's where
Yes.
we went.
It took us off track.
The other option is I do have a self-paced course. So you can purchase the self-paced course on my website, and it is a combination of videos and PDFs and spreadsheets and things like that. To walk you through it, there is a guide. So you go in order so you know where you are and where to pick up where you left off. And there is also a really handy, essentially like a monthly to-do list so that people can print that out and check that off so they know I did this, and I don't need to do other things, right? I don't need to get caught in the weeds. And with that self-paced course, although you are doing it on your own, you do have access to me. You can ask questions. There's a private Facebook group where you can ask questions. And there's also a complimentary one-on-one when you purchase that. And then you can purchase additional one-on-ones at a discount if you're a course member. So a lot of people love that because, one-on-ones with me are during the day. And a self-paced course, you can do it at midnight. You can do it whenever. You can do it on Sunday morning.
Right.
You can do it whenever you have that time, and you're still getting the same good, valuable information, but on your own time.
I think that's awesome. I love that model too. Also getting my brain thinking where I'm like, we do a lot of courses here. We do a lot of workshops, part of what Tandem Works does. And we've had an online one, the social engagement method. We've now taken that and we've actually flipped it to an in-person one, which I feel like they go the other way. And we're actually doing a hybrid now where it's online and in person. So there's 3 classes in person, and then there's pretty, I'll say intense, but intense in a good way, online support in between. Mm-hmm. So I like that too. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting way to do a model too. I love that there's like access, but flexibility. So that's awesome.
Access, flexibility. I love it. The other thing is I'm starting to create a new thing. I don't know exactly what format it's going to take, but it's going to be strictly about cash flow and understanding cash flow because cash flow can really make or break a business. Regardless of your profitability, cash flow can be the killer. And it can also be the thing that just keeps you alive, even if you're not profitable. So believe it or not, cash flow really, really matters. And I am putting together some personal case studies of clients that I've worked with and talking about what they did, why it helped, and just real life examples of real businesses because I have that evidence and that experience, and it's so broad with the many different industries. There's going to be something for everyone in there. But I really think cash flow is kind of like that secret sauce in a business being really successful. Whatever success means to you. Like, remember my house cleaning business from back in the day when all I wanted to do was not work. I was so burnt out and I needed some income. Success to me was creating that income in the least amount of hours, right? And so
Right.
I wasn't trying to make a $1 million business. I was just trying to support my life for a small amount of time until I could figure out my next step.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was one of the most successful businesses I look back on because I really did what my intentions were. I really created that business with my own goals in mind and then achieved it quickly and to the point, without extra fluff.
That's good. Becky, I've got some rapid fire questions for you.
Yes, let's go. I'm nervous. Okay. I'm nervous about your rapid fire questions. Okay, I'm ready.
You tell me you've listened to the podcast, so you'll be right on with this. I promise. What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions about owning a business?
That it's always fun and easy.
Yes, that is a big one. That is a big one. You shared a little bit of this already, but I'm gonna ask again. What's an important piece of advice you've been given and you've actually applied to your business?
Ooh, an important piece of advice. I don't know if I would consider it advice, but I did work with a mindset coach, and that just really helped me overcome some of those. I don't know what to call them, but like just my communication fears, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what really helped me is just being understood and accepted for exactly who I was in that moment with the opportunity to overcome it in like a really safe environment.
Yeah.
And so I really recommend like some internal deep dives sometimes if you feel like that's holding you back.
That's awesome. The most successful business owners I've met, and also I need to take this advice myself, have coaches. And I've had some coaches in different areas. And I had to tell you, when I do have somebody coaching, speaking into my life, things are better. They just are. Yeah. And when I don't, it's not necessarily that it's abysmal, but it's not as good. Right. So,
yeah, that's really, you know what? That's really good advice, because I will say too, from my own perspective, when I hired my first coach, she was a marketing coach, and it was very unnerving for me because it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. And I had never invested that amount of money in myself before. And that amount of money and investing it in me, not my family, not my kids, not my husband, but me and me alone, was upsetting to my nervous system. Let's put it that way. And what I know is, in hindsight, that's probably some of the best money I ever spent for my business. And also it was not easy work all the time, but it was always worth it to learn the things, because sometimes learning new things is hard. It's not always hard, but sometimes it really pushes up against your belief systems that you didn't even know were there. And so, yeah,
that's good. Hey, when you do relax, do you have a favorite kind of kick back and relax beverage or snack, or what's your thing?
I do. I am known as an iced tea drinker.
Ah, yes.
I am a dark, black, unsweetened, no lemon iced tea drinker all day long. And when I need a little something sweet, I go for the orange Olipop.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Is there a, it could be all or one, is there a song, book, podcast, something that you kind of have on repeat or you're really loving, just can't stop talking about right now?
Well, writing tandem.
Here's your $20 for that. Thank you. Nicely done.
I'm not sure I've listened to every episode, but I did go back to the beginning, and I have listened to most episodes. They're very good.
Thank you.
And very, I love a business owner's story. Like I love it.
They're
It's
cool.
interesting. It's cool. You always learn something, and it always makes me feel, like things are possible, right?
Yeah.
It's always kind of uplifting. So, other than writing tandem, I listen to podcasts. They're pretty popular. Happier by Gretchen Rubin,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one called Happier in Hollywood, which is her sister. I've listened to those for years. I've listened to every episode of those. Like I don't know that I started listening when they started, but I know I've been listening to them for like at least 4 or 5 years.
That's cool. Is there something, Becky, that people often get wrong about you?
Sometimes my first impressions can be a little. For podcast listeners, that was a face. I was making a. Yeah, sometimes I come off a little cold, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. It's just kind of how it happens. And I don't mean for it to be that way. I don't want it to be that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's how it comes across.
I was asked when I was probably like 11 if I ever smiled.
Oh.
And so then I was like, oh, challenge taken. And so I trained myself. I put myself on a training program, a self-imposed training program to smile more. So I feel ya. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I smile. Just not on the outside, apparently.
It's not to you.
Yeah, that's right. What do you think business owners can do that just makes the world a better place?
Oh gosh, this is a good one. So I have a quote that is really important to me in my business, and that it is wealth in the hands of women will make the world a kinder and more inclusive place.
Mm.
And I really believe that when we put money in the hands of people who love loving people, that your community, your world, your home, whatever version of that, you can go micro to as macro as you want, just makes the world a nicer place to live in, and that's the world I want to live in.
Yeah, that's good. It's so true, and we can have such impact on the world if we choose to, right? Choose to tap into that. So I love
And
that.
I do think that sometimes people think, when we say impact the world, they think, oh gosh, I could never, that's too big, or I'm not Oprah, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can impact your world in your neighborhood. You can
Mm-hmm.
impact your world in your school system, in your community, whatever, however big or small you want that to be. It is, if you impact one other person, you are impacting the world, because it is a ripple effect.
It is, and it's such a it's something that sometimes you don't see unless you open yourself up to see it, right? It can be easy to discount, oh, that wasn't a deal, it wasn't a big
Mhm.
deal. Not that you need a huge head when you know everything you do, but this is actually a talk that I give um, about specifically using our personal social media profiles for impact and profit and positivity. And I am really passionate actually about talking about that because it's literally that it is a small thing that has such huge impact that I
Mhm.
think people often overlook. And so I've been having a lot of fun giving that talk more often. I think I'm going to do it with some exiting college students, which I'm
Oh,
excited about.
nice.
I've wanted to do it more for that age range too. So, but yeah, that's just been a lot on my heart lately as I've been giving that talk more. So that's a fun thing. But well, Becky, we're going to do it again, obviously. And
Let's
maybe
do
we can
it.
dive into some, nuances and that. But I really appreciate this. And I'm just going to again encourage people to connect with you and to reach out. And just a reminder, too, that Becky, you do work with people all over the country. And so it's not just to reemphasize for you, right? Like you don't do taxes. So
Mhm.
you really help people with their mindset, with that strategy, with your 3-part
Mhm.
system. And people can use that
Mhm.
all over in any state, in any town, in any size. And so just to encourage people to reach out to you and engage and explore with you and see if there's maybe something there for them.
Yes,
I think that would be
absolutely. And that's
awesome.
absolutely true. Yes, I can work with any kind of business. And I generally, I would say that my ideal client is somewhere in that, if they're projecting for the next year, somewhere between 75,000 and 300,000, that's usually seems to be the sweet spot.
Perfect.
For this kind of work and that size of business, is the kind of business that usually can really benefit from this knowledge, because they're past that beginning stage. They've got a sales process. They are selling stuff. They have consistent money coming in. They aren't surprised by their next sale, right? It's not a happy accident. It is an expected outcome of their sales process. And so they have that kind of going. Now, you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to be, at the top of your game, but that's kind of where it starts. It's like, okay, I've got this part of my business under control, at least a little. I trust it to keep going. And now I want to focus on the money side of things to make sure as I grow, things are growing in the right direction. Because profitability really matters when you start to scale. It really matters. You do not want to scale an unprofitable or low profit business, because then you just exasperate those cash flow problems.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. I think you've helped me for sure, with just shifting mindsets, right? And that's a big piece of the puzzle here when it comes to our money. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh my, that was such a great conversation. And I feel just energized around the idea of money and finances, as well as just challenged to stay consistent and keep consistent with that. And so I would love to hear your thoughts and questions and what you're thinking when it comes to money and finances and having a CFO mindset. Do you feel like you have one? Is that something you're on a journey for? Is it something that you're like, I'm just still not sure? So feel free to pop into messages with me or to send an email. It's all listed, my contact information in the show notes, as well as Becky's information as well. And we would both love to hear from you. As always, super great if you would leave a review and share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. It does make a difference. I know everyone says it, but it's such a huge difference when you leave a review, when you share with a friend. It does help us to grow the podcast. And the more it grows, then the more that we can continue to do this. And I think that's just such an amazing thing to have this community for people like us who are business owners, entrepreneurs, people in leadership, or maybe thinking about diving into this world. All right. Well, we'll see you in the next episode. And until then, be sure to follow on our social media, Tandem Works. Follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And of course, you can always hop onto our email list as well if you'd like to receive weekly emails from me. They are split between inspirational things, educational things, and then information about the latest podcast episodes. All right. We'll see you in the next episode.